everyone. Irini Hara again, streaming from Oslo for the podcast Autism on 360 degrees. Today we have a shiny day with a lot of sun, but it's the sun that has a little bit of frozen mood as it is under zero. I think it's -3 on my computer. But in any case, we want to keep warm in our hearts and continuing spreading the word around the world of autism, its challenges, its achievement, the solutions and people or actors that can support. And today I have again a special guest, Zsuzsanna. Your name is a little bit long and difficult to read, but she said Zsuzsanna, it's okay, Fenyő. And she graduated in 2009 as a habilitation educator and primary school teacher in Hungary. And during her university, she studied many different areas like pedagogy, psychology, speech therapy, kinesiology, neurology, gaining a thorough understanding of the development of the nervous system. As a habilitation educator, she specialized in various neurological conditions, such as cerebral palsy, brain injuries like stroke, delayed motor development, Parkinson's disease, and multiple sclerosis. Between 2009 and 2019, she worked as a habilitation educator and later as a department head, both in Norway and Sweden, primarily with children and adults affected by neurological conditions. She also took courses in diagnostic, understanding, and support for children and adolescents with the autism spectrum disorder, as well as other courses to expand her field of knowledge and expertise in kinesiotyping therapy, Dorn therapy, Norwegian Sign Language. From 2019 to the present, she has been working extensively in kindergartens as a special educator teacher. Here is called special pedagogue or pedagogue, and completed a training as a sensorimotor assessor and therapist. Being also invited to give lectures on the topic of independence in early childhood, and started also private practice as a sensorimotor therapist. On Facebook, you find her as an administrator of the sensorimotor processing disorders, aiming to spread evidence-based information related to this topic on the territory of Norway. Welcome, Zsuzsanna. I'm very happy you are accepted to be here.
Thank you very much, and hi everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this podcast.
Thank you. If you wish to add anything else beyond what I already spoke about in my introduction, feel free to do so.
No, I think it summarized, it's a good start. And I just want to apologize in advance if my English is not very good or expressive, because mostly I speak in Norwegian and Hungarian, mainly Norwegian. So some of the words might not come as easy, but I will try my best.
Well, I can support in case it's necessary with translation, because I understand more Norwegian than I actually speak it. And I'm sorry, I don't speak Hungarian. But, well, we will do it well, I think so. So you have a very rich background, and you specialize, from what I see, in this area of supporting kids in kindergarten, kids that are on the spectrum. And I would also like to know first, before we dive more into the method you are using and your experiences with it, into your own motivation. What drawn you towards this field and learning more about psychology, pedagogy, and special needs?
That's a very good question. Since I know myself, I was around children like from teenage years. So for me, it was quite natural to go for a field where you can have contact with children. And my specialty is working with children with special needs, and I guess I have a sensibility for it. I've never had any in my family who sitting in a wheelchair or has some, some special needs. But I was very drawn into this field, like a little bit just out of my personality, I guess. And when I started to do start my study in the university, so I found myself really at home, and I felt that this is what I want to do. I really like the feeling to helping to get the children in a higher level of functioning and give them more possibilities in life. So in their life. So it was just something I just continued to do, and the reason I never stopped to study because I I've never stopped it. I always take some new courses and so on that I feel like that it is needed. When I started my early years, I worked mainly with children who has CP and some adults as well who has some neurological issues, injuries, and as the years went by, I realized that these diagnoses very often doesn't stand by themselves, but comes with a lot of other issues, with a lot of other challenges, which if I have just one field of expertise, which is, I would say, quite narrow uh, from the aspect of the patients, then I'm not able to help for them as holistically as I thought I was doing, because this approach I had, it's quite holistic. It's based on the whole person and not on the diagnosis, but still I had an expertise in just one field, and I started to get patients who had several diagnoses beside each other. I started to have patients who had CP as a secondary diagnosis and has, for example, autism spectrum disorder as a first diagnosis, or had autistic traits as beside those challenges I could help with. So I felt that I have to just go after the next one and the next one, which can come complete and which helps me to give the help they need to could choose and give, like, how you call it, so that you can give the right guidance to them and to find the right path for the families.
Uh, It's true. We always need to learn more and more. It's what I also been doing for a while, learning different methods and then testing them. I would like that to speak a little bit about what actually means sensory motor processing disorder, because there might be some of us that don't know. I guess it has to do with senses and disorders in how we process sensing, but maybe you can detail a little bit this part.
Yes. So sensory processing disorder, SPD for short. It's like it has this name SPD, but it's not a diagnosis on its own, not yet, at least. It's a condition, I would say, where we have our senses. We have 8 sensory channels where we perceive the world. So when we hear something, then it goes into the ear and the brain registers it in that field. And we have 8 channels like this. And where when something in this system, like we have the sound goes in and there's some perceptors, like they are taking this input to the right place and it get registered, and then the right response is getting out, like it's an in out way, then something is not working the way it should be. Then we have some problems. For example, we can talk about, like, we are not getting the right signals in, or the signals not registering right in the brain, or the response is not appropriate to the input, to the extent of the input. So I think when we talk about sensory processing disorder, it's like a word not so many may be heard of. But when we talk about, for example, hypersensitivity, or when we talk about hyposensitivity, then maybe some of, oh, I know what's that it, because then your reactions, it's much higher, for example, than an average person has, or the person who doesn't has it has. So, for example, when someone has a visual problem, hypersensitivity, it means that a very little light registers, for example, much higher volume. So you are going to be very sensitive to light, like someone is just clicking on the light, and it's okay for a lot of people. Or when you are in a classroom with your friends and they are just okay reading, but you have to do like this to close out all the extra light you are feeling. So when the system is not working how it should be, then we have a processing disorder. And the reason for people who have processing disorder can be a lot of things. Some of the parts are not discovered yet either. But it's based on the nervous system, and an immature nervous system is often a cause of sensory processing disorder. And why is it connected, for example, autism spectrum disorder or other neurodivergent problems, is because they often has sensory issues. Sensory processing disorder is something which is highly common, for example, in autism spectrum disorder, and for example, ADHD or Tourette's, or you can learning disabilities or learning difficulties. So you can see that an immature nervous system and some early childhood traumas as well can cause that the processing is affected, and it's not working the way it should. And it can cause a lot of symptoms which we still doesn't acknowledge as it's because of the sensory processing problems, or
Yeah.
sensory integrations problem, how it was called before. Yeah.
Yeah, my son has had this diagnosis of highly functional type of autism, which has a label that I never remember, and I don't think it's even relevant. But what's relevant that he always had since he was quite small. So we identified this problem in kindergarten. I think it was already here in Norway several years ago, that he has sensitivity to noise. So if he is in spaces that are too noisy or really crowded, like commercial centers, or even at school, sometimes if there is too much noise and agitation, he places his fingers in his ears because he feels like he has to protect. And usually in all these places, even when we go outside somewhere or on the plane, or he will always have protection headphones against the noise. And my curiosity would be that in this case, what if we want to try to improve this condition and to make him less sensitive, because would be easier for him also to cope with many different situations if they will not have the sensitivity, because this also hinders a lot his ability to connect and to be present with other people in social context. He also is not very social, and we already know that autistic children and people have this how to say difficulty in socializing. But I think many of these sensory disorders actually contribute in creating more difficulty. So what would you advise to do for such a child? And if there is any limit regarding the age and in the development stage that he is, because he also started now with puberty and there are a lot of changes in his body. He's not aware, but he then manifests them sometimes in a very aggressive way, or through states where I feel that there's a lot happening and it's not able to fully express. What would you think that would be a path towards improving or betterment of this situation?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think there's several things one can do. The first thing is very important to understand what kind of sensory issues we are talking about, and to really have uh, like a whole understanding, like it's all mostly not just one sensory issue we have, and what type we have. So when one understands its own sensitivity or its own processing problem, or the family understands why my child is doing this and this and this, then it's much easier to address these problems. The second one can do, like we are talking about symptoms, right? These are the results of something not working right. So when someone is stimming, or they are, have behavior problems. So it's not the behavior problem we have to treat, but the cause. So we have to check, we have to decide. So it's always okay, actually, to treat the symptoms as well. So you can adjust the environment, right? And you can have hearing advices like which can help to close out, for example, the sounds. Or you can have, they call sensory diet you can set up, which means that you follow your children's needs because of the child's sensory issues, and you are supporting the surroundings with stuff. The second thing, which I think is much more effective, of course, it's when you take the cause of it and you help in that part. And that's where sensorimotory therapy is coming in, where you stimulate the nervous system on those parts which needs stimulating, and so you help to mature the nervous system, so those processing problems will be decreased or will be solved. So when you have like a child who is seeking stimulation because it doesn't get enough, because his wires needs more stimulation than an average person. So then you see that this child, for example, has to just pace up and down and up and down, or has to jump every day or something because he needs this stimulus. So then you, with this training, can give enough maturity to these channels, so they will feel that, okay, less is enough. So I don't need to jump every day all the whole time. Or when you are getting, for example, frustrated with something, so it's maybe not coming out with aggression because this frustration will be much less. So the sensorimotory therapy, it's the main goal with it, to mature the nervous system, to give support for these channels so they can work smoother and they can register the right amount response with the right amount input. So that's the three parts.
I see. And how practically you do this therapy? What kind of approach or exercises do you have to this purpose? Of course,
Yeah, so
you don't need to explain now in detail everything, but
no.
just give some hints about it.
Yeah, some main traits, like this method I'm using, it's called the targeted sensorimotor therapy, TSMT, and it actually has like I would say 2 or 3 parts. The first part is a mapping. There's a longitudinal complex diagnostics. It's a test, and it gives a whole picture of all the areas of the children. So we're gonna get a whole picture of the cognitive, psychological, emotional, like all the regulation skills and the cognitive skills and the speech skills. So every area, the main areas are covered. So we will see which areas this child has strong parts and which areas this child needs support. And it shows as well where the sensory issues can be. And of course, with this test, it comes sensory processing disorder test, which is based on the family's experience and the child's or young adult's experience. So we can check which channels are to be supported. And so after it, it's a very individualized therapy training. Actually, it's which can be home-based. So you can do it together with your family. It doesn't require much, like basic, like a ball or a skateboard or something. So nothing special. And this therapy, it goes. Now I try to do it like just briefly, and this is, of course, you can do it together with a specialist as well, with the therapist. The thing we like to integrate it to the home as well, because oftentimes these children has or the families are affected as well because of the children's challenges. So it's like we treat the family as well as a whole. So it's very good, an emotional bond together with the family. The parents understand much more of the children, and the children gets a very nice feedback from the family how they together getting on the road. So it's a very nice work together. But it of course can do it together with a professional as well. With the therapist, and this is an individualist. We usually start here, but when the the effect kicks in when the child develops, and when the child is it's like reach a kind of level. Then it's very nice to have a group session as well. We have TSMT2, which is group based, and this actually goes in groups, and it's very nice because then parents can as well meet with others who has the same difficulties, and children experience as well the same challenges they have with their peers, and they like developing together. So it's a very, very positive atmosphere with the group. And we have a water-based therapy as well, a hierarchy, which is a very calming and very nice environment, which supports the TSMT 1 and 2. So it's actually individual starting and oftentimes follows with groups.
With groups. You are based in Norway, but you are not in Oslo. You are not in the capital, I think, right?
No, we are two actually who are doing this sensorimotoric training till barn. This is the name. Me, I'm in Trondheim area, in the middle of Norway, and Hanga is doing it in Stavanger and that area. So we have plans to cover Oslo as well, because it's quite a big area and
And there
it's
are many
needed as
cases
well.
here. Yes.
So we have plans to go there and do it periodically. And yes,
Yeah, let me know
extend
when
that.
this happens, because I had the same issue also with Anne, that she presented in the first episode, the neuro movement, and she's near Alessund. And I went there for holidays for 1 week now in winter, but I cannot go all the time for having
Yeah.
sessions. So it will be easier actually if the therapist will be available closer to Oslo, or
Yes.
if we can do something also online or something like that. I don't
But
know.
what is
But
good with
yeah,
this, that you can that it can be home based. So
yes,
what you need to
that
meet
is
up, it's
relevant.
for the mapping and it's for to set up the training, and it has to be remapped because the child how the child develops, we have to recheck which areas are needed. Maybe now the main goal was this and this, but when the child develops, so maybe other areas opens up where we can do our work as well. So it has to be sometimes meet up, but you can do most of the work actually at home.
At home, yes. And of course, for evaluating is better that is in present session, I
It
suppose.
has to be in
But you
presence.
can do the
Have you?
follow-up online for the parents, so they can work at home, and you just meet from time to time, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah, that is actually good, and it can work easier for those
It's more
parents.
suitable in Norway where the distances are so big. Yes.
Yes. So yes, we will keep in touch after the interview. And is there any limitation regarding the age, or there is any recommendation when to start this training when you detect that something is not in a, let's call it, regular pattern in terms of sensory motoric function?
Yes, actually, it's an age limit, but it's not based on the effect. The age where it's um, so, anbefalt, how you call it, when it's
Recommended.
recommended, thank you, it's from 3 months to 11 years. And the reason it was set an 11 years um, cap, because after when the teenage years kicks in, the children tends to cooperate much less, and then it can be the effect can be decreased, or can be actually something which not working so good. So if you are stimulating the nervous system, you have to be very careful how you do it. And when you meet with someone who doesn't want it, so you cannot force it. So
Yeah, I
that's
know.
why actually it get an age at 11. There's some stuff and some tasks you can do after it. It really depends on the patient. It really depends on the
Yeah.
child or the young adult, I would say. Of course, you can do TSMT with adults as well, with some results. But of course, the earlier you start, the more effect you can get. It's how it is with the nervous system, but it's never stops, developing, and the neuroplasticity. Now we know, then it gives opportunity to be developed after 11 years of age as well. So in some cases, it can be effective as well.
Yes, yes. Well, my son is a little bit rebellious in this phase, so I suppose it would be difficult, but maybe not impossible. I actually noticed something lately with him, and maybe you can tell me if it can happen or not. Because I noticed even these last days, he likes to see music or some movies that have music on YouTube in his free time, and then he sometimes reproduces because he likes to sing a lot. And the last 2 days, I noticed he was putting the volume very high, and he was not even wearing the protection for the ears, which is he usually does even at home, where we have a very quiet environment because we are living in outskirts near nature, and it's not the same as inside the city. And I looked to him and I asked him, but aren't you bothered it is so loud? Because it was very bothering for me that I don't have this sensitivity. And he just smiled to me. So is this a sign that something is changing in his own sensibility, or is just it might be that he doesn't pay attention? Is it something that can happen? Because usually he is always with the protection even at home, but sometimes lately I notice he puts them on a side.
Mm. And it
But
hasn't happened before.
not so much. Lately,
And you,
I noticed it was more because I'm very careful in all the changes that can happen in his behavior routine. Because I always, as I'm also a therapist, I work with trauma therapy constellation. I'm used to notice, to observe
Mhm.
details, and I'm also a researcher, so it helps even more. All the skills that you acquire, sometimes you have to apply them in these cases, and sometimes I take clues from it. So then I know that I should work on this or try to explore more. And I was actually surprised because at school they always tell me that if it's too noisy, he's upset, or he can become actually aggressive sometimes. So they need to separate him sometimes. But at home, where we have such a quiet environment, I don't know what to expect. But if he starts to not be so bothered anymore by loud sounds, it might mean that something changed. I don't know. I have to say that we did some session of neuro movement. So that might also be an effect of those sessions, because I know those also work with neuroplasticity
Mhm.
and in improving the condition and connection between body and brain. So it might be that only now I start to see the effects of what we did in December. But in your experience, in your understanding of how this can evolve, because you already have some, would it be possible?
It would be if it's very important to check, like you sounds like you're very aware of every little changes around your son, and I would see, like, if it's just one song, if it's always the same song he wants to listen loudly, is it more like every kind of noise or just music? So we have to, map what is the quality of this sound which he likes, or is it like starts to go outside as well at home, like all the noises are acceptable suddenly? Is it a part of a day when he wants to listen just loudly or not? But when you get the right stimulus and when you help support the nervous system, so it can change. That's how it can work. For example, a child has some issues in the vestibular system, in the channel where you have your balancing and how you stand up straight and so on. And if a child has, for example, issues in that channel, then they might not don't want to learn to ride the bike, or don't want to use a skateboard, or sitting in these playgrounds using these all the equipment, because it feels very excessively strong
Over,
for them. And
yeah,
yes,
overstimulating. Yes.
but when you get the right stimulus, and it can be from other therapies as well, which has an impact on the nervous system, then these sensitivities are decreasing. So I had experience with a child who doesn't never want to look at a bicycle. After 2 sessions of therapy, he wanted to take it for a drive, and he didn't want to stop with it because he started to enjoy it. So it can be a sign of some change.
Yes.
Also, it can be a sign if when you are going to the teenage years. So there's a lot of hormones, a lot of changing in your body, so your needs can be changed as well, the sensory needs. Maybe he gets something, a dopamine rush or something in your body which gives him some pleasure. And it can be as well that he just wants to listen to that. If it's just one song and he is getting really good with this song and you can feel that he's relaxed, it might give him something which balances out the sensitivity to the sound. So this sound, it's not gonna be, so he's not gonna be so sensitive. There is a lot of question around what kind of music or sound you can listen. And with autism spectrum disorder, I know that someone likes to listen to hard rock music, because they get enough stimulus from it, or
Yes.
someone reacts to classical music much better. So maybe your son found some music he liked really much and he connected with it, so it gives him something which he
Yes.
hadn't gotten
He
before.
likes Muppet Show. Bohemian Rhapsody is sang by the Muppet Show band, you know. But I also noticed lately that he likes to hear sometimes some classical music. Usually, it has to be related with also a story or a fairy tale that he enjoys, because there is a context there that he finds interesting to also see, not
Mm.
only to hear. But yes, that was a sign that something started probably to switch. Would be very good if this would be actually a consequence of the sessions we did with neuro movement, because it would be a confirmation that that methods also work. But I don't know yet. I didn't yet observe other many changes. I just noticed that sometimes he also pronounces a little bit better some words that usually had some more difficulty, as he also has some difficulty with pronunciation and verbalization. But enough of myself. Let's return a little bit to your experience with the other kids with special needs, and in particular ASD. As you said that you have worked for many years in kindergarten, where the children are still very young, and I suppose it's sometimes even easier to work with them and to make improvement in their condition. Do you have any memory of a very special situation when you actually, through your method or your experience and support, you could see really an improvement that was really important and made you very happy? Or maybe one, more than one, I don't know. Something that
Yeah, I have
a
a lot.
success story, you know?
I was thinking about it, what I would answer to this if you would ask it. And it is very hard because some memories, emotionally very strong because I got connected to the family or the child so much and I know how much they mean to them. And it maybe wasn't a big change. And for some, it looks like, the dream version where the child starts to grow. And my latest case, I can maybe tell about it because I couldn't choose. I had two very fine memories. The one is the latest, maybe this is the freshest, I don't know. There I used already the sensorimotory therapy as well, in some way at least. And um, and this was a child I got responsibility for when he already was in kindergarten in a year, and he got some special pedagogue with him, but it wasn't like very, they didn't had any diagnosis, they didn't know what they are facing with, so they, I would say, took very good care of him. But I could see that he had enormous potential in himself, and I felt that this potential wasn't showing anything or out for the world. It was a very bright little guy, and he had a lot of autistic traits as well, but he had a lot of motor delayment as well. He was, how old? I think he was 3 years old when I started to work with him, and after 2 weeks he started to walk, and he was close to it. So I wouldn't say it's my it's the result of my work together with him, but he got pushed over that edge, so he started to walk. And by the time we finished the kindergarten, it was 2 and 3 years together. He got one extra year in kindergarten, so he was 7 when he finished kindergarten and not 6 years old. And by the time, so he was able to attend every program in the kindergarten. He also was able to take off, this hearing protector a lot of times, and just when it was very sudden voices or something, he could tell me to use it, and not didn't need it to rush there, but he just showed me that he needs it. We found a channel where he could communicate, and he started to use sentences after a while because the support system was the right way. And so it was like success in almost every area of his life. He was still had autistic traits, and he still needed special attention, but the way he developed, in Norway it's not easy to get 1 extra year. It means that you have a potential to get so much better for during 1 year, so that you really benefit from 1 extra year in kindergarten. And the reason he got it, because he showed so much improvement. So during that 1 year, he could take off his diapers as well, so he was diaper free, which was a big challenge for him, and without any extra anxiety. So he was quite relaxed and calm, and he was happy to go to the school. So it was a big relief for the mother as well, and for, I would say, for the whole kindergarten, because he is a very lovely boy and everybody wanted the best for him. So it was a big success actually that he got so much better for school start. The other was, it maybe shows how different it can be, that I had a patient and she hadn't had a diagnosis. No one knew actually what's with him, with her. She had a lot of various symptoms. One of was that she was nonverbal, and the thing was, so which was strange, that she had words before, and suddenly she just stopped to talk, and she didn't meet the criteria of any diagnosis. She wasn't autistic or something, but she still didn't. She looked like she chose not to speak, and we worked a lot of the speech as well, based on motoric movements and based of physical activities. And after, I would count now, 10 years with therapy. She was one of my first ones. I got, like, she was finished with my therapy when she got so grown up that she couldn't attend anymore. I mean, she moved away for a school, so it was the reason. She got older and she had other things to do. And like 3 years later, I got a video from the mother, and where she recorded that she started to speak again. And the mother told that they continued everything they could, and she is sure that it was a long-term result. And it's very important, I think, to think about it, that we don't really know how long it takes, to get a result, but the results are coming. Most often, as I experienced, after a little time, they need to sink in.
Yes,
They need time to grow inside, to mature inside, and then the effect suddenly comes.
yes. It's a matter of persistence and also understanding what is the best way to invest the time and of course the energy and money. Speaking about money, I mean, many of these methods, even the neuro movement, they are private. They have been created and then promoted as private practice, from what I know. But recently I connected with this Doman method, and there is an interview also about this with one of the members of the family, as they are on international organization right now. And they say that Daman is one of the fewest methods here in Norway that actually you can get a sponsorship, or at least some of the cost, or maybe even full cost covered, because of course it's an investment of money, especially if you need to do it for several years. And what about this aspect related to this method? Is that any way that people can also apply for funding from the state, or is just private practice, so like going to a therapist and paying regularly, or do you also practice special discounts, or how does it work?
Uh, Now it's private. We actually quite newly started the private practice, so it didn't have the time to grow out from the private practice. Our goal is to, I would say, like, get in the system. I think it's something which is very little known, or actually it's increasingly known, but it's very little, therapy
Advertised.
for this.
Yes.
And yes, so I think very few people knows about it. That's why we started the Facebook group as well, where we spread the information about what is this, because more and more children has sensory issues or sensory symptoms, sensory processing disorder, the symptoms of it, and more professional, like teachers and everyone who works with these children, knows about this, but they don't know if there's anything solution for it. And as I see, the Norwegian healthcare system doesn't has any solution for it yet. So that's why we thought that it would be very important to have it in Norway, because this is something a lot of children needs. This a sensory processing disorder doesn't need a diagnosis. It
Yes.
doesn't need to be fit some criteria. You can have this disorder and have actually a very finely functioning brain beside it. So you can have, like, nothing beside it, I would say, like this. You don't have to be special needs either. So this is affects a lot of children, and it's modern days. So these modern times produce the sensory issues. So it's increasingly needed, and our goal is to start it as a private praxis, and now it's how it is. We started at a discount price, so this year it's gonna be cheaper, and we are gonna have it like at a full price from next year, I would say. And we hope that we can have a contract with some of the communities, or I would say to have a contract with the state, or coming into the spesialisthelsetjeneste, for example. Then you have to be much more well known,
Yes.
and of course you have to have a research, and this method is evidence based, but there is very little research about it in Norway. So what we wish to do is to find someone who willing to research it in Norway as well,
Mm.
because then it's much easier to get founded, to get some support from the state as well.
Yes. I think there are some groups at the university also here in Oslo, Oslo Met, if I'm not wrong, that they are researching also into autism. But from what I saw, it's a lot about how to create new methods for learning and for diagnosing probably. I don't think they actually look into the cause and what's because that is a different mindset.
Yes.
And in my own opinion, many of these sensorimotory difficulties, they can appear after a traumatic event. As you said, they can appear in people that not necessarily have a diagnosis of SD or something else. And probably one of the cases that you spoke about, that child or lady that stopped speaking had such an event. And I don't know if you investigated into it, but in my understanding as a trauma therapist, working also I didn't have cases of, let's call it disorders, but I have my son as a case study because I also work with him sometimes, or I take him to therapy. And I know my own biography and his. A lot of these disorders, and even autism, one of the main causes is trauma, early trauma. And I speak about early trauma considering the period also in the womb of the mother since conception. And interestingly enough, for me, there is not so much research done on the correlations between this kind of trauma and the appearance of this manifestation. Like we pathologize them, but in reality, they will become more and more common because there is an increase of procedures and factors that lead to traumatization,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And that's why I always think that prevention would be very good. But prevention means that exactly we have research, we have statistics, we have solutions. And
Yes.
I never understood why, since I came to Norway and I understood that my son has this syndrome and he needs support. I've been searching for solutions, and it's only in the past maybe 3-4 years that I start to connect with something. And it's been a very slow process because nobody, not even those that are in charge in the system, in the healthcare system or in the education system seem to know or to be able to provide solutions, not even the PPT. They just provide reports and evaluations as it happens when you get a diagnosis. But when you ask, okay, give me a therapy or give me something that can work, that I can try, nobody knows. They spoke only mainly about logoped, and I also tried logoped with my son. We did it actually in Romanian because it's my native language and he understands it very well. Because the logoped here, they said that he doesn't need when I actually know he needs it. And they only recommended exercises at school as he goes in a special group with special teachers. But in any case, I've always been aware that beyond what the schools provided, in many cases not even so sophisticated or so supported, we should as a parents also contribute and try to do something at home. Or I've heard many stories also in other countries where there are programs where people are supported at home and they are given tools to do it at home, many different things that can help beyond the real therapy with the therapist. And I never understood this. And that was one of the motivation that I decided, okay, I will create a podcast where actually we can speak about this and we can inform and we can increase awareness about possible solutions or at least possible pathways for something to improve. And I'm happy to hear that actually you have a far-reaching vision regarding this, but I can guarantee you it will be a long road from
Yes,
my own experience, but never
yes.
give up.
No, it's a long road, and we don't plan to do it quickly. I had been experiencing. I was working in one of the methods earlier, which is coming from abroad in Norway. So I know how struggling it can be the way, but it's not impossible, and I know what we have to be careful. But I agree with you really much about that. Today, in the beginning I told that how the three levels understand the symptoms and understand what it's caused. It's very important, and you can treat the symptoms, and it is very can be helpful, beneficial as well for the short term, and how important is to get to the cause and treat that. And I think today is mostly focused on the symptoms,
Yeah,
like understanding why and so on. It's
not so relevant.
maybe important for the parents, I would say, and some of the professionals, but it's not the main focus. To treat the symptoms, they have quite okay solutions. A lot of times, they focusing mainly on them. But if you're not understand the causing, so you're not gonna be able to focus on treating the cause either. So I think it's missing. And when you don't have tools, when you don't know that there's a cause and there's a solution for it, then you are not able to give the right help. So that's what we try to help with here. And I think it's possible. It's just when you have to change mindsets, it's a much harder road. But I think it's the only road, because otherwise, otherwise, our work is not gonna help as many as needed.
Yeah, and I think that this road includes creating community and raising awareness. And
Yeah.
this can be done through groups and through associations, and also creating more network among people who practice and among people who need this practice.
Yes.
And that's why we're speaking today about what we are speaking. And I hope that it's not only speaking, that it will become also more like a more an easier approach for those who need this information.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think we speak mainly about kids, but sometimes also maybe adults. But if we start in the children in the early age, then the probability of recovery and of these symptoms to disappear actually is much higher.
Yes.
I think we already covered most of the aspects that I somehow thought that might be relevant to discuss with you. Is anything else that you would like to add? Maybe an advice for the parents that find themselves somehow puzzled with the system that doesn't give answers and they need a solution.
Yeah, it's hard to give advice when I think the parents knows mostly about these, lacks in the system. I think to be patient, it's very important to understand that however the system works in boxes and they're quite rigid, but there is a lot of research and there are a lot of articles actually about these causes and about how every case can be different. And for example, autism spectrum disorder, it doesn't mean that you are like this. It's not like you have a leg injury which have to be casted and so on, but the solution can be as many children have this have autism spectrum disorder. So and I think these articles and these researches doesn't shows in the practice, so that is what's problematic. But the parents stands in between, so it needs a lot of patience, and I think the parents just have to keep going. I mean, I know they don't have another choice either, but they are the biggest resource actually
for
the
the child.
expertise can get. Yes, and they are the ones who can help, as dumb as it sounds, the experts to find the right way, because it's a little bit takes a little bit more time to have these facts goes into the practice. So I think that what they can do is look up these groups, is find those experts who are willing to go outside of the box, who are willing to work with persons and not with diagnosis. And I think we have to just try to speak up, every one of us. So, because the state is quite good at listening, but if we are very little to speak up, then it's gonna be very hard to listen to these little voices. But there are much more in Norway who needs to hear their voice, I guess, and it's not impossible because I have seen changes in Norway to the right path and to the right way. So it's not hopeless, but it's sometimes it needs fighting and it's not easy. But if you find the right
I can
person,
confirm.
yeah. But I would say I have experience from other lands, and it is a little bit like this. Because you know, the parents, they are doing their research every single day. They are doing their research based on their son and daughter. They're doing their research based on their children, which is an individual situation. And they will find much earlier the possible solutions
Mhm.
than the experts who are meeting from a brief little window with the children and who has their minds set on some boxes. So I think it's always controversial that what you can expect from an expertise, if you see it, it's a little bit twisted angle. But as I experienced, I always want to listen to the parents in first what they think, because they sometimes much more ahead of me than I ever will be with this child, because they done their research much thoroughly than I can ever done with this child.
Yes, well, it's not always like this because I also see what's happening around me at the school of my son, for example, and there are many parents in the group where my son goes that they are not aware and they don't want to know.
Mm. Okay.
I
Yes.
was actually probably the driving force in the group that 1 year ago I gathered them and I said, I'm not happy with what's happening at school. They have to invest more, bring more teacher with more understanding of the spectrum and how to teach to these kids and so on. And I organized a meeting with the director at the time and other people. They promised they will change. But nowadays, I'm finding again myself in a situation where I see that actually the school doesn't do the right. And then my son is punished because he is rebellious or he's aggressive and he's not even understanding what's happening with him. So, and I don't think, I mean, there are parents and parents, and we have to be aware of this because some parents trust blindly the system, even if the system is not guaranteeing on supporting with a lot. Of course, it gives some services free of charge, it gives you some money, but it's not enough. What the
Mm.
system should do, and I speak about medical healthcare system and in specific the one that is dedicated to the rehabilitation no, of these cases, and the educational system, and in specific special education, they should actually be aware and understand that there is a sequence of steps that they just cannot ignore some because they're not aware of the others. There is too
Mm.
much information and too many case studies that are successful that they should become aware instead of just putting a screen or
Yes.
offense, like, we know better, but actually we don't know anything, This is
Mm.
my feeling. And I'm not blaming anyone in saying this, because the systems are made of people, and we are people all together, the same and also different among us. What I'm putting the blame is the fact that people don't want to look outside the box, because with this kind of syndromes is the only way you can go and actually find a real solution. If you keep inside your comfort zone of pretending that everything is okay when it's not, and accepting blindly this is fated, the autism cannot be improved or cured in its manifestation and so on, as many people claim nowadays, we don't go very far away, and those people will continue to suffer, because there is a lot of suffering that is just masked by
Yes.
the so-called politically correct view of the
Yes.
situation, and this is not healthy for anyone.
No, I
And that's
agree.
why I'm always advocating for people to know more about trauma and what are the effects of trauma on many different categories of abilities or disabilities and so on. Because, as I said, there is not so much done. But with this conversation I'm having with you and other specialists, I start understanding more and more that is not only about trauma, or it's not only trauma that is a taboo, although there are many people speaking about it, but little do something about it. This is what needs to change, that we speak, but while we speak, we show solutions, so people can start to actually do something instead just sleeping in their shoes. Because
Yeah.
many parents, they sleep with the idea, oh, the state will take care of my son or daughter, or I have many members in the family, they can take care of father. It's not a solution. This is
No.
just accepting something as fated when you know there are solutions and they can be improved.
I agree with you in that aspect that in Norway, the trust in the system is very strong. So these parents
I
doesn't.
don't trust so much.
No, no, but you are not was born and raised in Norway, so we have another mindset from Romania and Hungary
Yes.
and these countries. But in Norway, the trust in the system is very strong, and I think it's not a bad idea if the system takes up on its challenge, and takes the responsibility. And I think the system tries, but it's not enough what the system gives. And what I meant about it, that I guided a lot of parents with distrust, not to mistrust and not to lose this, because I think it's very important that they have. I think it's a very helpful tool when are calm in your situation because you have a system behind us. In Hungary, where I grew up, it wasn't trust to the system like this. You knew that you are on your own, and it's an added stress. So I think there's actually quite beneficial to have this trust, but to open up the eyes, it's very essential. And I worked a lot about it, that that you have to see for options. The system is there, will support you, but it's not, you don't have to stop there. You can do your own thing. And what I meant about that, the parents does their research when you have opened them eyes, and it's not it's actually quite easy to do when show your, how you say, your tricks as a professionalist, when you show that you know what you're talking about, so they will ask questions then, and then you are going to be a part of the trust system, and then you can have them to open up, and then they will do the research, and then they do it very, very good. So the Norwegians are very good, in English, and very good to find the groups and the support system, because they grew up by having the state as a support system. So
Yes.
I think it's actually something which can be used, and if you can be a part of this trusted system, so then you can have them to raise questions, to ask questions, and to look for solutions, to be a part of that supporting system themselves as well, because then they actually can help a lot for their children, and they can like open ways for private practices, for new methods. Because whenever you read an article about parents speaking up, it's maybe not so much, but then there are people who are really engaged with their children, not because they have lack of trust for the system, but they see that the system needs developing. So I think it is possible to work like this as well, and to accept, maybe not say that it's enough. I don't think that's a good idea, but to say that, okay, that has positive sides as well, that the people has so much faith in their state and in the system they are living in.
Yes, but on the other hand, I also think that those who are stressing, or at least they understand that the system is limited, then they can gather strength to search for options.
Yes.
And this requires an ability to get out of the, what I said, the comfort zone,
Yeah.
and the way of thinking. And of course, it's cultural, it's social, it's economical too. And I would like to see this change. But from my experience in the 7 or almost, no, 8 years of Norway, and it's already 7 years since my son got the diagnosis, I was actually feeling, and I'm also a single parent, so I have an extra difficulty in my life. I was often feeling that I was searching with a small candle in front of me to find a path where I could support my son. And it was always either blocked, or people just sending me back from like where I come, or just telling me I'm speaking bullshit,
Mm.
or just saying, yes, we are trying our best, and they are not doing much. So this is a personal experience I was confronting with. And it's only recently then this other people that I'm meeting that they actually have solutions, because they practice something and they saw how important it is to think a little bit out of the box. They gave me hope. And that's why for me it's like, okay, I don't want to be a fighter against the reality that I see in the country, but sometimes I also ponder, maybe it's right for me and my son to get out of the country and seek for a country where we have this kind of information support much more easier, without having to struggle and to try to figuring out, or to be told that you are crazy just because I think in a different way and I act in a different way. So I really hope for a change. And as I said, I try to not blame anyone, but systems are made by people, and we're all people. And
Yeah.
what we are trying to do is to create opportunities so people become aware of them. Thank you again, Zsuzsanna. Very nice to have this conversation with you. It's always enlightening to find new opinions, and I don't bother when people also bring different opinions than mine. We are growing, and we create more network, and keep in touch also besides this environment of the podcast. And for all of you who will listen to this, thank you again for having patience, and I hope I didn't upset you or maybe I just encouraged you to go a little bit beyond what you are familiar with. And I welcome you for another episode in the future. Meanwhile, subscribe to the channel because it helps me increase also visibility, and share the interview with your family, with your community, with your groups, because there might be someone who actually needs to listen to what we're saying here. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day and week. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Zsuzsanna. Bye.